displaying all the all the topics, right? But typically we want to be able to display not all the topics, but the topics for a particular lesson, right? So that lesson, I don't believe we implemented the lesson, but let's play around with it a little bit, and let's see what we got so far. We got the. Do we have a reducer for that? I believe we do. We have a lesson reducer. I believe I saw a reducer for it. Yeah, we do have a lesson reducer, and we have some static data for that reducer. It's returning just always the same lessons, which is perfect, right? We got some IDs, and these are representative to the IDs that we already have in Mongo. Perfect. So let's render that. I believe we have the in the course editor we have the lesson tabs is rendering those lessons. All right, so let's resurrect that. Let's go to our course editor, and let's bring back our lesson tabs. There we go. All right, there we have our lessons, right? And depending on the lesson that we select, we would like to display different topics. Okay, but I believe we don't have the URL for this. We don't have the URL for that. We'll need to modify a couple of things. Let's see. So this is here. We need to also add the lesson, right? Because we cannot show topics without the lesson, right? So let's work on the lesson first. Let's work on the lesson first. So those lessons that we're generating, let's create them. Let's make links out of them. Right, and it'll have the lesson title in there, and the hyperlink will be what? It'll be very similar to what we did for the topic pill. So let me copy that. I'm just going to copy that and bring it over, and there it is. So it'll be course ID. Do I have the course ID? The course editor, is it passing me it is passing me the course ID. It is passing me the module ID. I probably also want to pass me if I select a particular lesson, I also would like the lesson ID as well. There we go. All right, and do I have a router for this? Let's see, the routers are in my manager. Do I have a router for this? I believe I do. I did declare routers for all these guys, right? So module, lesson, yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, so in the lesson tabs, I can create those hyperlinks. Right here we have the course editor, then we have the module that is selected, module, and then the lesson, and this is the lesson ID. So this would be this.props.lesson ID, and this would be this.props.module ID. Lesson ID, and then the top. So this would be, as I am iterating, this lesson ID is the lesson that I am iterating over, right? So it would be this, would be lesson ID, Okay? All right, if I, props is not defined. Did I miss a this somewhere? Oh, right. This is a function, right? It's not a class. It's not a class. So let's convert this into a class. This is going to extends React dot component, and this is going to render. It's going to return this whole thing, right? And I'm not going to need this anymore. And here I'm iterating over this.props.lesson, and this is this.props.lessons. There we go. There we go. So if we hover over this, right, we see the URLs. Perfect. Now notice that the module ID is undefined. Right, that makes sense, right? Because we kind of skipped over that, right? So if I click on it, notice that what happened here? The lesson ID. Is it ID or underscore ID? Well, it's probably underscore ID, isn't it? Let's see. There we go. 000 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So we got that up there. Yes? Perfect. Once we have that, we can use the lesson ID to fetch only those topics for the current lesson. Excellent. So we can feed this. We can feed this into the. We can feed this into the topic pills. Let's see, in the course manager. Do we have that? Do we have, let's see, lesson ID. So we're here, right? Lesson ID. We're selecting different lessons. And the course editor is here. And we have the topics. And we are passing all that. So we should get the lesson ID. So we could do that. So in the lesson tabs, presumably in the lesson tabs, in the topic pills, instead of retrieving all the topics, let's see if we can retrieve only the topics for the current lesson, right? So let's print here, see if we're getting that lesson ID. So there's .props.lesson ID. Let's see if we're receiving that. Looks like it, right? Notice that, there we go. So notice that we're getting the ID for the lesson. Perfect, yes? That means that we should be able to implement here, instead of find all topics, we should be able to implement instead, this .props.find topics for lesson and pass as an argument the this.props lesson ID. Copy, paste it here. Now we can come down here and say, I don't want to find all the topics. Instead, I want to implement find, well, let's copy this. Let's copy that. Find topics for lesson, right? And pass in here the lesson ID. And the RESTful declaration of this REST of this URL would be something like lessons / and would pass in the current lesson ID here. And this would have to be one of these strings. Now we can pass in, there we go, right? And then set the topics. Now, do we have this in the controller? Probably not, right? Probably we don't have that. So let's head over to the server, and the topic controller, right? We can retrieve. We can implement that. Oops. We can implement that, and this would be, I'm going to pass you the lessons. Right? Pass you the lesson ID. / and I want those topics, and the function I want to call it find topics for lesson, right? And the topic service, we can implement that in the topic service as being something like public. It's the same function, right? So it's the controller, so we can copy this. Oops, copy. Paste it in there. And then implement it in the repository. So the repository we're going to implement find topic, topic repository. We're going to implement that, which doesn't exist right now. But we can totally implement it. You can say, create the method in the repository. There it is. We'll make it public. And the query for this would be what? Would be something like query, select the topic from topic, where topic.lesson ID is equal to LID. Right, and we can pass a parameter there. We can say param, the LID, I'm going to pass it to you as a string, lesson ID. There we go. Right, so that here I can pass you the lesson ID as a string from the controller. The controller is passing this, right? The controller is going to have to read this as a path parameter, as a path variable, the lesson ID, and pass it to me as a string, lesson ID, so I can then pass it to you down to the service. All right, so let's see if this blows up. Let's make those two topics that we have. We're going to make them. The parent will be lesson 1, 2, 3. So if we head over to our database, here's our topics. Where's our topics? Our topics. Let's refresh this. Notice that it has no parent. So I'm going to say this is owned by 0, 0, 0, and the other one was owned by 1, 2, 3. So let's update that. All right, so if we go back and now we refresh, do we need to restart the server? Yeah, probably need to restart the server. Let's restart the server, see if this blows up. Okay, so let's refresh this. Okay, notice that 1, 2, 3 is returning rest, and 0, 0, 0 is not doing anything. Oh, probably because we don't have component did update, right? In our topic pills, we only have component did mount. We also need component did update, which we're going to check to see, if previous props dot lesson ID. What is it? Lesson ID? Yeah, lesson ID. If the lesson ID changed, so if it's not the same, then this props.lesson ID. If it's not the same, fetch it again. Do the fetch one more time. Fetch me the topics again. All right, so there we go. Notice that now we have rest and JPA changing, and if I select rest, I get the widgets for rest, right? Notice that it doesn't display the topics because the URL that I'm using breaks the routes, right? So we need to fix those routes. The links that I'm using here, notice that I hover underneath. Oh, you can't see that. It doesn't encode module. It doesn't encode lesson. It doesn't encode any of that. It just skips over directly to the topics. But I'll leave that up to you. Okay.